My family only invited me to the reunion to humiliate me by bragging about my cousin's new job. They had no idea he was my new employee. So I let them talk all the way. Until my aunt called me a failure in front of everyone. So I just smiled, waited for silence, and said the 4 words that ended his career and her reputation forever. This is where the story truly begins. And you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The email arrived at 10:17 p.m. on a Tuesday, glowing with a cruel blue light on the laptop screen. Balanced on my knees. I was 3 days into the worst flu I'd had in a decade. Cocooned in a fortress of used tissues and half-empty mugs of tea. My head felt like a pressurized cabin. And my body ached in places I didn't know could ache. The email wasn't from my team, who were holding down the fort while I finalized our London expansion. It was from my mother. The subject line was deceptively simple. Vance family reunion, you must come. I groaned, the sound scraping my raw throat. I hadn't attended a full family reunion in 4 years. Not since the one where my Aunt Carol had cornered me by the potato salad and asked in a stage whisper that carried across the entire backyard if my little computer hobby was still paying my rent at the time. I had just secured my first round of series of funding. I'd mumbled something about staying busy and fled. This time the email's contents were far more direct. It was a forwarded message from Aunt Carol herself. A woman who weaponized enthusiasm in a way that always left me feeling small. Dearest family, it began. I am just thrilled to announce that this year's reunion at my home, of course, will be an extra special celebration. As you all know, my brilliant Jason has just landed the most incredible, life-changing job. It's a 6-figure starting position with a massive international firm. Bonuses, stock options. The works, he is just soaring. We are so proud. I closed my eyes, Jason. My cousin, golden boy Jason. For as long as I could remember, Jason was the standard by which all other family members were measured. And found wanting, Jason got a B on a calculus final. He's just so stressed, the boy is a genius. Jason crashed his dad's car. He has such quick reflexes. He managed to avoid hitting the mailbox. The email continued, I know it's last minute, but we must celebrate him. And of course it's a wonderful chance for all of us to catch up and see what everyone's been up to. A cold dread sharper than my fever settled in my stomach. I knew exactly what seeing what everyone's been up to meant. It was a performance, a curated show, where Jason was the star and Erin Vance, was the audience-planted cautionary tale. The quiet, nerdy girl who did computer stuff. And at 32 was still unmarried, childless, and in their eyes, utterly ambitionless. The last line of my mother's personal note, however, was what twisted the knife. Please come, Erin. Aunt Carol specifically asked if you were coming. She said she worries about you. Just show your face for an afternoon for me. Worries about me, that was the code. The polite, family-friendly way of saying they wanted to put me on display, to make Jason's success shine even brighter. I looked from the email to the other document open on my laptop. A PDF waiting for my final digital signature. It was the onboarding package for the new Q4 cohort of senior strategy analysts for my company, Vance Meridian. My gaze drifted down the list of names until it landed on the third one. Miller Jason. Start date Monday. A slow, cold smile spread across my face, cracking the dry skin on my lips. My company, the little computer hobby they all dismissed, was the massive international firm Jason was joining. The firm I had built from nothing in my studio apartment. The firm whose logo was deliberately nondescript. The firm I had intentionally kept my name off of. In all public-facing materials. Preferring to let the work speak for itself. Jason, in his arrogance, had clearly not researched the board or the CEO. He just saw the six-figure salary and the impressive title. I hit reply on my mother's email. You know what, Mom? You're right, I'll be there. I wouldn't miss it for the world. I took a long drink of cold, bitter tea. My headache was suddenly a little better. They wanted a show, I would give them one. But they had forgotten one crucial thing about me. They had forgotten that the quiet, nerdy girl was the one who always did her homework. And this time I was more prepared than they could ever imagine. The betrayal wasn't just the setup. It was the years of being underestimated. And that, I decided, was a debt I was finally ready to collect. The 2 weeks between that email and the reunion were a blur of closing the London deal and fighting the drags of my flu. My CFO David, a man who believed understated was a synonym for weak, had been begging me for years to do a PR push. Aaron, no one knows who you are. He'd argued over a video call, his image buffering slightly. Vance Meridian is a ghost. We're pulling in 9 figures. And the Times thinks we're a mid-level data processor in Ohio. You need to be on a cover. A conference something. David, we're not a ghost. We're discreet, I countered. My voice still raspy. Our clients don't hire us for flashy PR. They hire us because we're the silent engine that fixes their billion-dollar logistical nightmares. They like that we're not splashy. Fine, he sighed. But one day you're going to want that recognition. And you're going to wish you'd built the platform. I thought about that call as I drove my 5-year-old, unassuming sedan toward Aunt Carol's sprawling, new-build house in the suburbs. I had intentionally left my Tesla, the one I'd bought myself, as a congratulations for paying off my startup loans. At home today was not a day for flash. It was a day for camouflage. I parked 3 blocks away and walked, allowing the humid July air to settle on me. I wanted to look exactly as they expected me to look, slightly tired, slightly rumpled, and entirely unremarkable. As I rounded the corner, the house came into view. It was a monument to beige stucco, with a 3-car garage, and a lawn so aggressively green it looked artificial. A giant professionally printed banner flapped lazily over the entryway. Congratulations, Jason. The future is yours. I took a deep breath and rang the bell. The door was pulled open by Aunt Carol herself, who enveloped me in a cloud of expensive perfume and hairspray. Aaron, you made it. Oh, you poor dear. You look exhausted. It was the opening salvo, not how are you, but an immediate confirmation of my presumed failure. Just a little tired from work, Aunt Carol, I said, forcing a smile. Oh, of course, your little job. Well, come in. Come in, everyone is just dying to see you. The house was packed. The air was thick with the smell of catered barbecue, and the dull roar of relatives trying to talk over one another. I was immediately passed from aunt to uncle, each one giving me a sympathetic pat on the shoulder, and a variation of the same comment. Still with that computer thing, Aaron. Good to see you're well. Good to see you, don't you worry, dear. Your time will come. Each comment was a small paper cut, a deliberate reminder of my place in the family hierarchy. I just smiled, nodded, and kept my eyes peeled for the man of the hour. I found him holding court by the pool. Jason was, I had to admit, the picture of success. He wore a salmon-colored polo shirt, crisp linen shorts, and a watch that was aggressively shiny. He was surrounded by adoring aunts, all hanging on his every word as he gestured broadly. And the VP of Global Strategy. He tells me, Jason, we're not just looking for analysts. We're looking for visionaries. It's an incredible synergy. The potential for disruption is massive. I almost choked on my lemonade. Synergy disruption. He was parroting the exact keywords from the orientation handbook I had personally written 5 years ago. He finally spotted me, Aaron. Hey, long time no see. How's everything? That was Jason's signature move. The vague dismissive. Everything that implied. My life was too small to contain any details worth asking about. Busy, I said, keeping my smile firmly in place. Same old, same old. But wow, Jason. This sounds incredible, a life-changing job. I heard it's with a massive international firm. He puffed up instantly. Yeah, well, it's a pretty big deal. Vance Meridian, you've probably never heard of them. They're very exclusive. Vance Meridian, I repeated. Tasting the name, no. Doesn't ring a bell, but it sounds very impressive. Congratulations. Thanks, he said, already losing interest, and scanning the crowd for someone more important to talk to. Hey, I think they're still hiring for like data entry or something. I could probably put in a good word for you. Get you out of that freelance stuff you do. The freelance stuff, I was the founder and CEO. He was technically my subordinate. The urge to laugh was so strong it was almost painful. That's so thoughtful, Jason. I said, my voice sweet. I'll definitely think about it. Aunt Carol swept in, handing her son a beer. Don't bother him with small-time stuff, Aaron. My Jason is on a rocket to the moon. She turned her beaming smile on him, then looked back at me, her expression tightening into one of pity. It's just wonderful, a real career security. A future, He'll be a millionaire before he's 30. She then leaned in her perfume, making my eyes water, and delivered the line she'd been saving all day. Unlike some people, I ate elder gaze. I didn't flinch, I just smiled. You must be so proud, Aunt Carol. Oh, I am, she said, pulling back, clearly disappointed I hadn't taken the bait. Now, if you'll excuse us. Arthur is about to make a toast. Do try to look happy, dear. As she led Jason away, I let my smile drop. The rocket to the moon was about to hit some unexpected turbulence. Because they had all forgotten one crucial thing. I was the one who had built the launch pad. And I was the only one who had the codes. To understand Aunt Carol, you have to understand the Vance family hierarchy. We weren't old money, but we were old pride. The family was built on the stoic, hard-working legacy of my grandfather, Arthur Morgan, a man who had turned a small woodworking shop into a moderately successful regional furniture business. He valued sweat, calluses, and tangible results. My father and his sister Carol were different. My father was quiet, content to be a high school history teacher, a profession grandfather Arthur respected for its stability, if not its ambition. Aunt Carol, however, had married a man who made a quick buck in real estate, and had been desperately trying to rebrand the Vances as high-flying socialites. Ever since, for Carol, success wasn't about achievement. It was about perception. It was the zip code, the brand of the car, and the title on the business card. And I, in her eyes, was a catastrophic failure on all three fronts. I was the odd one, the daughter of the quiet history teacher, while Jason was playing quarterback. I was in my room learning to code in C++ while he was going to frat parties. I was building a database management system for a local nonprofit. My father had encouraged it. It's where your mind works, Aaron. He'd said don't ever let anyone tell you that's not valuable. But when my father passed away from a sudden heart attack, during my sophomore year of college, my anchor was gone. My mother, bless her, was lost in her own grief. And Aunt Carol descended. I remember her coming to our house, ostensibly to help but really to pass judgment. She'd walk through my father's study, where I'd set up my fledgling coding business, and tusk at the clutter. Aaron, honey, she'd said, picking up a server component, I know you're sad, but you can't just hide in here with these toys. You're 20 years old, you should be out meeting people, interning at a real company, like Jason is at his father's firm. How will you ever find a husband if you smell like soldering iron? That was the crux of it. My failure wasn't just professional. It was personal. I wasn't following the script. When I dropped out of my prestigious university a year later, a decision that nearly broke me, it was because my little computer hobby had just received a $1.5 million seed investment. I couldn't do both, but I didn't tell them that I couldn't. How could I explain venture capital to a woman who thought stock was something you bought at the supermarket? I just said I'm starting my own business. The family's reaction was predictable. My grandfather looked disappointed. My mother wrung her hands. And Aunt Carol looked triumphant. I had confirmed her every prediction. I was the dropout, the weirdo, the failure. Well, she'd said with a tight, pitying smile, we all have our own path. I'm sure your father's pension will help until you get on your feet. I never corrected her. I let her believe it. I let her believe that for the next 10 years. I let her believe I was a struggling freelancer. I let her think I was just getting by. It was easier, it was my armor. While she was busy bragging about Jason getting a corner office at his dad's tiny real estate firm, I was quietly building Vance Meridian. I built it on the principles my father had taught me: integrity, precision, and silence. We didn't advertise. We acquired clients through word of mouth. We were the company that governments and Fortune 500s called when their systems were broken, their data was compromised, or their logistics were in chaos. My team and I flew to Zurich, to Tokyo, to London. We were the best, and we were invisible. And now, standing by Aunt Carol's chlorine-scented pool, I was watching the antagonist I had created in its full, glorious bloom. She had spent a decade cultivating this narrative of my failure, and today was meant to be her victory lap. She had trapped me, or so she thought. She had gathered the entire family as witnesses. But as I watched her prune, I realized she wasn't just an antagonist. She was a caricature. A woman so blinded by her own shallow definition of success that she couldn't see the truth. Even as it was preparing to serve her a drink, Aunt Carol clinked a spoon against a wineglass. A toast, a toast. Everyone gather round. The murmur of the crowd died down. She climbed up onto the patio step, beaming with Jason at her side. Thank you all for coming, she trilled. It's so wonderful to have the whole family together, especially to celebrate my brilliant boy. She reached out and pinched Jason's cheek. He looked embarrassed but pleased. As you all know, she continued, her voice rising in volume, Jason has just accepted a position at one of the most prestigious firms in the country, a leader in global strategy. It's a job that people dream of, a job for leaders. She paused, her eyes scanning the crowd until they landed with surgical precision on me. It just goes to show, she said, her voice dripping with false sincerity, what happens when you have focus, when you have ambition, when you don't just give up and settle. The air grew thick. I could feel my mother's hand twitching on her glass. Several cousins looked down at their shoes. This was at the public execution. We are just so proud of him. He's going to be a millionaire before he's 30. You mark my words. She raised her glass. To Jason, the future of the Vance family. To Jason, the family echoed as the cheer died down. Carol kept her hand on Jason's shoulder. Her smile was sharp. Oh. And Aaron, she called out. As if she just remembered I was there. We're all so glad you could make it, dear. We haven't heard from you at all. What have you been up to? The question hung in the air. A perfectly crafted weapon. What have you been up to? This was the moment. The turning point. For 10 years my answer had been a shield. Oh. You know, this and that. Just keeping busy. Same old. Same old. I had stayed a passive victim. Because it was easier than fighting a battle. I didn't think I could win. But standing there, with the sting of my aunt's public insults still sharp, something inside me didn't just break. It hardened. My father's voice echoed in my head. Don't ever let anyone tell you that's not valuable. I was done being their cautionary tale. I took a deliberate step forward, pulling the focus of the 50-odd family members directly to me. I let the silence stretch just a second. Or two longer than was comfortable. Actually, Aunt Carol, I said, my voice clear and steady, carrying easily across the patio. It's funny you should ask. I saw a flicker of confusion in her eyes. This wasn't in the script. I was supposed to mumble and look away. I've been well. I've been incredibly busy. I continued, letting my eyes drift from her to my cousin. That London expansion I was working on finally went through. It was a nightmare of logistics. But we got it done. I heard a few confused murmurs. London. My mother whispered. Aunt Carol's smile twitched. London. Oh, how nice. A little vacation, dear. Not exactly, I said. It was for work for my company. Vance Meridian. I let the name land. I watched as it registered on Jason's face. His tan seemed to pale by several shades. His smile froze, then collapsed. He looked at me, his eyes wide with a dawning, sickening horror. He knew what Aunt Carol snapped, looking back and forth between us. What did you say? Vance Meridian. I repeated, louder this time. My company, the little computer hobby I started in my dorm room. It's grown. Jason was shaking his head. A tiny, desperate motion. No, that's not possible. The CEO is the board. I researched. You researched the public-facing board, Jason. I said gently. You didn't research the private holding company that owns 100% of the stock. VM Holdings. Vance Morgan. My father's name and my grandfather's. I am the sole proprietor and CEO. The trap wasn't just my silence. The trap was my name, the name they had spent my entire life dismissing. The name Vance. The very name Jason had been so proud to be associated with. Never once making the connection. But you. Aunt Carol stammered. She was a shark that had just been told the ocean was in fact a small pond. She was completely out of her depth. You're just airing. You're a freelancer. I agreed. I am free to lance wherever I choose. This week it was London. Last month it was a server farm in Iceland. Next month it's the annual board meeting in New York. This isn't funny, Aaron. Carol shrieked, her voice cracking. Jason, tell her. Tell her this is a joke. But Jason was mute. He was staring at me as if he'd seen a ghost. He looked like a man who had just realized he'd spent the last month bragging about being hired to wash the car of the woman he'd been mocking. This was the moment where I could have stopped. I could have let the shock sink in. But I knew my aunt. I knew the family shock would wear off. It would be twisted into a story of my arrogance. I needed more than shock, I needed proof. You know, Jason, I said, walking closer to him, my voice dropping into a conversational tone. I'm glad we're having this conversation. Because I was concerned when your file came across my desk. This was at the investigation. I hadn't just seen his name on the list. The moment I saw his application, I had done what I do best. I ran a full diagnostic. I didn't hire a PI. I didn't need one. I am the PI. My company's entire business is built on finding the truth in data. Your file, Jason whispered, his voice hoarse. Mom, I said, pulling out my phone. Your resume. It's very impressive, summa cum laude from your university. Intern of the year at your father's firm. Head of regional development for 3 years. See, Aunt Carol crowed. Finding her footing. He's brilliant. He is, I said. He's a brilliant creative writer. I turned my phone screen toward my grandfather, who had been watching all of this with a dark, unreadable expression. I was curious, I said, my voice ringing with cold, hard clarity, so I made a few calls. That's some accolade. He was 40 credits short. He didn't even graduate. He withdrew due to personal reasons, after his fraternity was suspended for cheating on finals. The Intern of the Year award. It was from his father's firm. He was the only intern and head of regional development. Jason, your father's firm is a 2-person office above a dry cleaner. The region you developed was the new territory for the office. Coffee machine. A collective gasp sucked the air from the patio. Every eye was on Jason, whose face was now a mottled, terrified red. You. He stammered. You can't. That's HR. That's confidential. It is, I agreed. It's confidential company information. And as the CEO, I have a right to know who I'm hiring. Or in this case, who I'm not. Aunt Carol lunged forward. You're lying. You're a liar. You've always been a jealous, bitter little Aunt Carol, I said. My voice like ice stopped talking. And she froze. You are accusing me of lying about falsified corporate documents. You are doing it in front of 50 people, including my own legal counsel, who is probably my second cousin. But I'm not sure. But more importantly, I said, turning to Jason, you're trying to defend a man who committed resume fraud to gain a 6-figure position at a multinational corporation. I looked at Jason. The golden boy was gone. In his place was a terrified 28-year-old who had just been caught. You lied on your application, Jason, I said softly to my company. That's a federal offense. The silence that followed was so profound. I could hear the hum of the pool filter. Aunt Carol looked like she'd been struck. Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Jason was physically trembling, his eyes wide with panic. A federal offense. My mother whispered, her hand flying to her chest. Misrepresenting credentials to a publicly traded, or in my case, soon-to-be federally contracted corporation is a very serious matter. I said, not taking my eyes off Jason. It's not just fudging a resume. Jason, it's fraud. This was the first major confrontation. I had laid the groundwork. And now I was revealing the first layer of the truth. I had expected denial. I had expected anger. What I got was desperation. I didn't. I mean, everyone does it. Jason blurted out, his voice cracking. It's not a big deal. It's just, marketing. Aunt Carol, seeing her son's pathetic defense, snapped back to life, but her usual bluster was gone, replaced by a brittle, panicked rage. He's right. How dare you? How dare you come here and attack my son? You're just You're jealous, you've always been jealous of him, jealous. I asked, a genuine, mirthless laugh escaping me. Jealous of what exactly? Aunt Carol, his fake degree. His imaginary job history. Or the fact that he was so arrogant. He applied to a company with our family name in its private charter. And didn't even notice. He got the job, didn't he? She shrieked. You hired him. That's what matters, you said it yourself. His file was on your desk. He passed the first round algorithm, which just screens for keywords. I explained as if I were talking to a child. He was then interviewed by a junior HR manager who, frankly, I will be having a very serious talk with on Monday. He was approved pending final executive review. My review, the review I was conducting when I got your email. I turned my full attention back to Jason, who had shrunk under his mother's defense. You didn't just lie, Jason, I said, my voice quiet but carrying. You were sloppy, and at my company we don't tolerate sloppy. It's a logistical security firm. Cousin, sloppiness gets people hurt. Sloppiness costs millions. Sloppiness in our world is not an option. Aaron, he pleaded, finally looking me in the eye. It was the first time he had ever looked at me like I was his equal, let alone his superior. Aaron, please, I can explain. It was my mom. She. Don't you dare, Aunt Carol hissed, grabbing his arm. Don't you dare blame me. Jason Miller, I did everything for you. I made you. You made a fraud. Carol, a new voice boomed, cutting through the tension like a circular saw. Every head turned. My grandfather, Arthur Morgan, was on his feet. He was a tall man, still imposing at 78, and he was staring at his daughter with a look of such profound disappointment and fury that Aunt Carol physically recoiled. He had been silent until now, observing from his chair at the head of the table. The patriarch had finally spoken. Arthur, Carol began.